Today's guest fled the Soviet Union with her family as a young girl, just $100 and a suitcase. She didn't even speak the language when she arrived in the US, but now she's an award-winning TV and film producer, a lifelong entrepreneur, and small business advocate. And if you're in Michigan, you have the chance to hear her speak next week. Expert Connections starts now. Welcome to Expert Connections. I'm Julie Holton. Let's get right to our guest this week. Jenny Feterovich was a Russian immigrant who came to America, she says, with $100 and a suitcase. Jenny, there has got to be just an incredible story that just starts with that. Welcome to the show. I can't wait to hear more. Tell us about this story, your story of coming to the United States.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for having me. Excited to be here, and my story is just like, I think a lot of refugee stories, which is what this country is based on, right? This country welcomes refugees with open arms since its inception. And, some people land here with money on an airplane. Some people take a boat and they're rowing. Some people take a very difficult and long journey. So my journey was not short. I came here in 1989 from the Soviet Union still. It wasn't even Russia at that time. We were a part of a Soviet Jewish immigration wave that was happening. So 1.5 million Jews left the Soviet Union at that time. Some went to Israel. A lot of them went to Canada and the United States of America. And like many others, we had to leave everything behind: money, belongings. All we could do is take some suitcases with us full of things that we would sell along the way to survive. And then, we arrived in the promised land of United States of America. And this is where the reality hits you. It's really not what you pictured it to be. And you got to make a life for yourself when you don't speak the language, you don't understand the culture, you don't understand the food, you don't understand the customs. But I got to tell you, this is truly the land of opportunity because like many other refugees, this is a place where anything is possible. And I truly believe that is the case, that anything is possible in this country. And I've proven that over and over again, reinventing myself in the music space, in the film and television space, in the entrepreneur space. And, my life has been a series of why nots. Basically, people come to me and they say, do you want to do this? And I say, why not? And I end up in many different places that I've ended up in.
Jenny, how old were you when you first came to the US?
I was 14 years old.
So old enough to have known your customs and culture and known what life was like before, and really because I think that's an important piece of your story, because you understood. Some people will come over and they're so young they don't remember, but you knew what you had left behind and what you had ahead of you. So what was it like in those early teenage years for you?
I mean, life was very hard. Coming to America is hard. Being a teenager is hard. You lose all your friends and then you get here and you don't understand anything, right? I mean, parts of it were great. You get freedom. You get to learn about different kinds of music that we never heard of before. You can get a car and, you can go places and there's a lot of freedom. But, it was also really hard. People were really mean to us in school. Went to Berkeley High School. People threw food at us in the cafeteria. They made fun of us endlessly. We didn't have anything. We looked the same every single day. We didn't speak the language. It wasn't all warm and fuzzy and open arms. There was a lot of perseverance that we had to overcome as a group of immigrants in this country trying to make a life for ourselves.
So within just a few years of arriving here, you started your first business at age 19. So it seems like you really chose to look at it as, what opportunities could you seize? What could you capture? What are you going to do with your life? So tell us about starting a business at 19.
Well, as immigrants and as refugees, we don't come here to fail. That's one thing, right? Like, we've got nothing to lose. We can't fail. This is literally our only option. It's not like we could pack our bags back and go back at that time. That was it. And a lot of times, that's why you see a lot of immigrants and refugees starting businesses. That might be the only option, right? When people don't speak the language. It's going to be hard for them to be employed. I mean, that wasn't the case for me. I always loved business because I always loved making something out of nothing and seeing it succeed or fail for that matter, because both are equally important. My first business was a huge failure. It was a huge failure because I had no idea what I was doing. I had no education around business. And, I borrowed some money from my mom and I started a resale shop. And I talk about it in my keynote, how important that failure was to a lot of my success. And since then, I've owned lots of different businesses. Some succeeded, some failed.
It's always the worst to say this because it's so cliche, but it's in those failures that we really are able to pick ourselves up to learn very few people out of the gate are just going to be successful. There's so many failure stories before we ever see that first success or have any idea what success even should look like. And so it's like one of those love-hate relationships with failure because that's where you're going to learn the most and grow the most. Jenny, you have the opportunity that I think is just, speaks right to my heart as a former TV news executive producer. You have interviewed hundreds of entrepreneurs as casting director and producer of the popular PBS show Startup. What are some of the most valuable lessons and stories that you've heard along the way as you've been able to talk to literally hundreds of people who are in this entrepreneurial world?
Yeah, I've talked to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds in depth from the beginning to the end of people starting businesses. And, we're now going into season 11 and some of those businesses have closed since then and some have become wildly successful. It's certainly lots of things that we hear over and over again, right? Like, what are you passionate about, right? Do you have a good plan? Luck favors the prepared. I always say that to people, right? Yes, it's great to be an entrepreneur and building an airplane while you're flying it. However, if you're extremely prepared, we have somebody on our show this year that we're going to feature in season 11, which is Wolverine pickleball. Those ladies were extremely prepared. I have never seen a story unfold like this. They took $200, second mountain, mom sent their kids to college, and now they're building a $7 million state-of-the-art facility in less than 5 years.
Wow.
Because they planned for it. They executed for it. They learned from other people's mistakes and some from their own, right? Those tend to be the most successful stories, right? Sure, there's lots of accidental success. But if you really want to scale, if you want longevity, all of that is very planned. It's very planned. Also, one of my favorite stories is when somebody really wants to do something and they go work for somebody who does it. Find yourself a mentor. Learn the industry, right? Like, that's the big mistake when people don't know anything about that business and they think it's cool and they just want to do something and they want to start that bit. And I've been there before, right? And sometimes it works out, but a lot of times it doesn't. And I've seen people start something and do something just to decide that's not really what they wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like a common theme on this show is that you can't do it alone either. So many people, like you mentioned, getting a mentor, having that community of people surrounding you that are going to support you, because it's not all fun and games, especially, for entrepreneurs. What drives you, Jenny? What is it that makes you so passionate about meeting entrepreneurs and sharing their stories?
So my mission is very simple. I want to help people become better versions of themselves through storytelling. So anything I touch, anything I do, whether I'm speaking motivationally, whether I'm filming content, whether it's the show, whether it's film, whether I DJ, whether I do any of that, it has to align with my mission. Because every single story might inspire another human being to do something they didn't think they were capable of. When they see somebody who looks like them on TV and they go, wow, I'm no different than her or him. This is how they did it. Why can't I do it? And their life becomes better and they become better people for that. I live and breathe for that. And again, creating something from nothing. It's one of the best things in the world.
How do you think we can be better supporting entrepreneurs or better supporting those who immigrate to the US? What can we be doing better as a culture in order to support people?
Be conscious where you spend your money. Every single day you have a choice. As a consumer, as a friend of an entrepreneur, don't buy anything, but talk about their business. Call them, see how they're doing, ask them how you can help as a friend. But as a society, as a culture, as we see the shift, what are you doing? Who are you getting your goods and services from? Like, I love knowing stories of where I get my, like, nothing against Starbucks. It's all good, but I will go to my local coffee shop any day of the week before I go to any chain. And, some coffee shops are owned by entrepreneurs and they're franchised, as we know that. But for me, that's like somebody put everything on the line to do this. They love it, they live it, they breathe it. Like, what's their story? So just make a conscious effort about anything you do in life. Yes, it's easy and convenient to do certain things, but this is how you can help.
You're giving a talk coming up pretty soon here in the Lansing area. Can you give us a sneak peek at what this keynote is going to be about? What are we going to hear from you?
Absolutely. So the keynote is going to be really my journey and coming to America, and I've accomplished some really incredible things along the way. And living through the power of my why not? How do you create that mindset? How do you create radical self-belief? How do you overcome obstacles? And then the power of reflection. I mean, it's really, you're going to get a lot of inspiration from this talk. And, you'll walk away for sure thinking, what is my dream? And feeling that anything is really possible.
I love that. And Jenny, what I love so much too is that you are living this every day. I mean, I think it's relatively easy for people in general to get up and tell other people what to do, whether it's consulting or speaking, and people can look good on stage and have a stage presence, but to actually have lived and now be sharing the story of how you got to where you are, I think it's just really inspiring. So I know I'm looking forward to hearing you speak when you come to Lansing, and we will post all of the information for those. There are still tickets available. This is a free event sponsored by Washington Avenue Advisors, our good friends in Reotown. So we'll post this information so that our audience can join us. Jenny, thank you so much for being on the show today. Any final thoughts? What is one piece of advice you would give to someone who's watching, who might be struggling in their small business or working to get their startup off the ground? A lot of our folks are, maybe several years in and really into that grind, and maybe hit those moments where they're wondering if it's worth it, wondering if this is going to come through. What's one piece of advice you have?
Right. For me, it's execution, execution, execution. Learn everything you can. Everything is reversible. Okay. Do not reinvent any wheels. Like, that's not a good idea. Okay. Like, literally everything has been done. Look at the people who are successful, reverse engineer, learn. How do they do it? I mean, you've got all of the resources in the world. YouTube University can teach you anything. Look at other people who've been there before. Just draw inspiration and draw real tactical advice and get yourself a mentor. You'd be surprised, the higher up you go in the food chain, the more people are enjoying giving advice or talking to people or mentoring entrepreneurs. Really, reach out to somebody. And believe me, I just saw an incredible person that talked about a concept, how yes lives inside a no. And it's so amazing, because I guarantee you, if I challenged you to go out there and get 5 no's today, it would be very difficult to do. It would be very difficult to do. People think it's easy, but it's not. There's a lot of yeses when you just ask people.
Jenny Feterovich, traveling the world now, sharing your message in your keynote speech. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today. Look forward to seeing you here in Lansing, Michigan. That is all for this episode of Expert Connections. Jenny, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.